Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. Now, Olympic swimmer Sharron Davies insists she has never been anti-trans, but is staunchly pro-female as she launches the Women's Sports Union with yachtswoman Tracy Edwards. The new organisation aims to protect single-sex categories in sport and take legal action against federations failing to ensure fairness for women. Davies, soon to become a Conservative peer, says the Supreme Court ruling on biological sex validates her decade-long campaign for women's rights in athletics. Well, I'm joined now by the former Olympic swimmer, Sharron Davies.
This important interruption is brought to you by ExpressVPN. Protect your money and your identity. Click the link in the description or scan the QR code here to get ExpressVPN right now and save up to 73% on annual plans today. Right, let's get back into it.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I'm so excited you're here.
Oh, me too. I know. I've been meaning to come down and see you for so long.
And every time I bump into you, I'm like, please come on the show.
I know.
Yeah.
And you're giving us an opportunity to promote our Women's Sports Union, which is so important because we just want people to join because we know that they need a voice, and Tracy and I just want to be that voice because it's really difficult when you're dealing with young people and parents of young people. They're frightened to say the things that they want to say. But we know that women's sport should be for women. We know that there's a biological difference between male and females. Even the IOC, at long last, have admitted that we can't remove male physical advantage. So what we mustn't do is just protect the elite and throw everybody else under the bus, which is what we're doing at the moment. And you mentioned the leaks of the Equality Act and the Supreme Court ruling earlier in this year, and it makes it extremely clear that women's sport should be single sex.
Well, this is it. You would think with the Supreme Court ruling that you would think that this debate would be over.
Yeah.
Yet you have particularly a lot of these grassroots. Was it about 40 teams?
Yeah.
40 sports?
34 sports still here in the UK that do not protect the female category. So a few of them, do that compromise of looking after the elite, but lots of them don't look after the pathways, the recreationals, the juniors. And what happens with women's sport is they just self-exclude. So, if you have, if women are going into a change room to do an all-woman class and there's a man that decides to identify in there, they will just stop going. Or if we have, young girls that are competing against young boys, they stop going. Or dads pull them out because they're worried they're going to get injured.
Lots of kids have been injured.
Yeah, lots of kids have been very seriously injured. One of the most heartbreaking stories that I've actually had was a mum came home, her 11-year-old came home from school this summer and said that the headmaster decided to be inclusive. Sport is already inclusive, right? Everybody gets to play it. You just play it where you fit the right category. He was going to run co-ed sports day, so they did mixed sports all day and not a single little girl won a race. And so this little 11-year-old came home and said, Mum, what's the point of me bothering? And that's what we're telling our young girls at the moment. What is the point in me bothering? And that is not right, because girls get 5% of the sponsorship dollar in the world of sport. That's all we get. There's 20 stories in sport for men versus one story for women. And we're 51% of the population. So we get this little tiny piece of the cake, and then we were told we couldn't even have fair sport anymore.
Well, that's it. So, you've been involved in this debate a long time, really. What was it the first... it seems so self-evident, and the thing about sports is it seems to be an easy issue for people to grapple with, easier maybe than toilets, and people can just... It's very self-evident that men are physically different to women, and that's why we have the different categories of sports. Exactly. So what was it for you that first got you involved within this very, as people say, toxic debate?
Yeah, it's genuinely less toxic than people think when you actually can get people to speak, without a camera being on them. It's people are just frightened. They are extremely intimidated, and for a very long time, the law was being misrepresented to the sporting governing bodies, and so they were going down the route of least resistance and just throwing women under the PC bus. I spoke out because I was involved with the East German era. So all these young East German girls were being given testosterone from the age of 11. They dominated world sport for nearly 20 years. The IOC did nothing about it. Everybody knew what was going on. Everybody knew that they were being given something. Track and field, rowing and swimming were the three sports they really concentrated on. In my Olympic Games, they won 6 1-2-3s and no men's medals, right, whatsoever. It was obvious what was going on. Many of those girls have died. All of them are ill. And a whole generation, in fact, 2 generations, really lost out on all the medals that they should have won. I had friends that were 4th behind 3 East Germans, and nobody knows who they are. And their whole lives would have been different. So I thought, I just can't watch this happen again. It's a slightly different route, but it's exactly the same result. Girls that should be winning were being beaten by people that are full of testosterone. That is not fair.
Every time you're online, your money and your identity are at risk. Scams now make up nearly 40% of all crime in the UK. That's thousands of attacks every single day. In Britain, someone has their identity stolen every 2 minutes, leaving victims with wrecked finances and years of stress. The threat is real, and you could be next. ExpressVPN is your shield against criminals. It locks down your devices, hiding your personal information and financial details from hackers, scammers, and anyone else looking to exploit you. So whether you're checking your bank, shopping, or just browsing, ExpressVPN makes you invisible to prying eyes trying to steal your money and your identity. ExpressVPN shields your data with military-grade AES 256 encryption. That's the same standard trusted by the US government to guard classified information. This is the highest level of online security you can get. So don't wait for disaster. Secure up to 14 devices at once and get powerful password protection. Real support is available 24/7 because cybercrime never sleeps. Save up to 73% on annual plans today. Every moment you hesitate is another moment you're exposed. Protect your money and protect your identity. Get ExpressVPN right now.
And I thought, I just can't. Surely the science and the peer-reviewed science, the evidence will stack up. It took us 5 years before we were even able to debate, and get that information out. And so the IOC in 2015 decided to take the position that there was no, the starting position there was no biological advantage to being male. And you go, but every result ever in history has shown you that there is. I mean, that's the most ridiculous position to ever start from whatsoever. And now here we are 10 years later and they've rowed back. But it's taken 10 years.
10 years to get sanity.
Yeah.
And one of those reactions, and I didn't know this as I was reading an interview with you today, was the reaction, because you used to work for decades for the BBC, and when you came out and you had this sort of horrific response by the head of sport.
Yeah, I mean, that was a new post, a new employment only a little while ago, I think 18 months or so ago. I mean, it was just an article that he'd written for The Times in 2019, before he was working for the BBC, actually. And it was just really ridiculous. He actually accused me of being a racist by saying that men in women's sport was the same as saying a black woman in women's sport. Well, I've got mixed-race kids, right? So I've got a daughter who does track and field who's black. It's such an insulting position to actually take, because no one is saying that any woman of any colour shouldn't be in sport. What we're saying is biological males shouldn't be in women's sport, and there's a very, very big difference. If you take track and field, I mean, again, we have a big problem in sport with DSD athletes. Now, these DSD athletes are biologically male.
We had the boxing this year.
Yeah, so we saw Paris last year, which was, a biological male was put in the boxing ring against a female. A male will hit 160% harder than a female onto a less dense bone structure. So for 10 years, we've been waiting for a woman to be paralysed or killed. And it's almost that's what we've been waiting for. And we nearly had it last summer. And I think a lot of people woke up watching that and realised that we just can't carry on doing this. Bring sex screening in, protect the female category, and create an open category if need be. Because I genuinely believe everybody should do sport, Josh. I mean, I've spent my whole life trying to encourage people to do sport. I don't want anyone to be excluded. I just believe that women are worthy of their own category. And, no one would say it's OK for a 15-year-old to go, I identify as 12, and I'm going to go off and play with the 12-year-olds because that's what I feel like. But that's what we've allowed to happen. Mm.
It's crazy. And as you say, when this argument is framed, it's always that the banning of trans people from sport. No, it's just be in the appropriate category. Be
in the category that fits the reality of the body that you have. And that's why I think an open category works, because you could call yourself whatever you like, wear whatever you like. I mean, what's frustrating, again, is that women's sport was always had no problem with trans-identifying men, so females that identify as male. So we even had a Filipino boxer in Paris, who identified as being male, but still opted to compete with the women, providing they're on testosterone. Nobody cares. So if the women can do it, why can't the men?
Well, that's it. Well, now the Olympic Committee have essentially said that it will now test for sex, and that is what is
sex
how
screening,
it's it. But I went to see you at a talk recently, and I was surprised by the prevalence still within the grassroots movement. And I really thought this was over, and it's not. So what is your newly founded organisation going to be able to do to get them to comply? Organisations
like gymnastics still have self-ID. So, there's no protection there whatsoever. We have a CEO of Rounders, a bat-hitting sport who doesn't think it's a sex-affected sport. Really shouldn't be in their jobs if they don't understand sport at all in that way. I think what we're going to do is go after these individual CEOs because they've been shirking their responsibilities. So we will put them very much on the spot. And also, the English FA, they decided to actually protect the female category after the Supreme Court ruling because their insurance was null and void. So public liability insurance becomes null and void if you break the law. And by allowing males into female sport at the moment, you're breaking the law. So we're going to try nicely to point all these things out because we don't want to do lawsuits. But if we have to go down that route, then that's what we'll do.
Because I guess a lot of these organisations are saying, oh, we're just waiting for the guidance to come out, which is such a cowardly route to it.
Some sports have been 2 years revising their policy. They're not revising their policy. They're doing absolutely nothing. So, we're going to stop them just sitting on their hands and doing nothing, pretend it doesn't matter. It really does matter. And it matters at every level. It's really important. We cannot say this woman is worthy over here because she's good enough. But all these women over here are not good enough, so they're not worthy. And that is sex discrimination. And those leaked documentation, we saw in the Times last week, actually says that it is sex discrimination. So that's what we'll be going for.
To explain to someone who doesn't necessarily, who might have just kind of gone down the route that it is about elite sport and it is about medals, can we just provide an argument to them that says actually all sport is important? Yeah,
well, why should anybody why should any woman be less important? I don't really understand. If you want to do it as a pathway or as a junior or as a recreational, why are you less important? You're still entitled to your fair sport. I know in tennis and in golf in particular, for club matches, a lot of women have been put up against men in club competitions and they just walk away. They just don't want to do it. Why should they?
Absolutely. And you saw the same even in a sport like pool, where you see that actually physical strength does have a huge impact on outcome.
It does. Height, and size of hands and break speed, and all sorts of different things. And the good thing is we went to court and we won that. So if we can show in court that pool is sex affected, then you can be damn sure that rounders is sex affected. So, we will be going after all the obvious situations. But it's really important that people come and join us. Membership is obviously there. We'd love lots of members. But if you want to be anonymous and make donations so we can fight on your behalf, then please do.
Do you believe that if your organisation had existed 10, 15 years ago, that we would be in this situation that we went through?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, we are in this crazy place because people stopped being sensible. I just want people to have common sense again because it used to be common and it's not anymore. And that's what we desperately need. But what was heartbreaking for me was that all these decisions were made against all the peer-reviewed studies. And it's taken us 10 years for them to pay attention to what was always there, apart from the obvious, which is why we had men and women's competitions in the first place.
Yeah. Do you think there is also a sort of a silver lining here, that there is the birth of an organisation like this finally that can, once this issue is resolved, that will be there to deal with other issues for women in sport?
And that's such a good question, because really what we wanted to do, what Tracy and I wanted to do, and it's fabulous that I'm working with Tracy, so I've got so much respect for her. And in fact, I was in Auckland when Maiden came in all those years ago, so we've got lovely history together, is to create something that gives women a voice. So in 1998, the IOC asked all their elite female athletes, they polled them to say, do you want sex screening to carry on? And 82% said yes, and they stopped it. So you kind of go, why did you bother to ask your female athletes if you're not going to pay any attention to them? And so we need something that gives female athletes an actual voice. And if we can then maybe just ship this off and have one in China, one in Canada, one in Australia, one in America, and they can be all over the place so that women actually get a voice in women's sport, then that would be a really good thing. I want to grow women's sport. I want to get better exposure, get more money in there, but more importantly, I just want kids doing it. We used to lose girls from sport at 14, 15. We're now losing them at 11.
Wow, OK, well...
And we both want so desperately for that not to be the case.
Sure. Well, my daughter's 9, so got 2 years left.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank
Ladies and gentlemen, big round of applause, Sharron Davies.